Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spill the Tea Radio, where we interview awesome singer-songwriters and those who influence their lives. Spill the Tea Radio explores the journey, creativity, and inspiration behind the songs. My next guest is a Toronto-born folk singer-songwriter currently based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, while she pursues a degree in classical voice from the University of Michigan. Her songwriting draws inspiration from American music of the 70s and the indie music of today with a mezzo folk tone like Gillian Welch and jazz inclinations reminiscent of Joni Mitchell. She has become a familiar face in the Ann Arbor local scene, playing heartfelt live shows with her jazz folk band. So, let's spill the tea with Maddy Ringo. Welcome, Maddy.
Thank you.
Maddy, I've listened to your music, and we can definitely hear some overtones of opera in there. I mean, there's no question that you have a spectacularly trained voice. So let's talk about that. You're classically trained in opera. When did this all start? At a very young age?
Yeah, very young age. My mom would say I've been singing since I came out of the womb. She says that I was just like, like I was just vocal from the day that I was born. So I was singing as a little kid, but when I was 6, my mom heard about this thing in town called the Canadian Children's Opera Company, which was started as the children's chorus for the Canadian Opera Company, and then it kind of seceded and became its own thing and started doing its own productions. And so I joined that when I was 6, and I kept doing it until I graduated high school. It was 12 years, and it was like the whole center of my life. And so we would do really intense choral training and dramatic training, and then get recruited to audition for the Canadian Opera Company shows when they needed kids for their productions. So I did, I think, 7 of those shows. So it was a crazy, weird theater choir kid life of just always being in rehearsal halls and backstage and running around the Four Seasons. And yeah, I was an opera kid. And it's really people get really confused when I tell them that, because people think opera, and so they think like Viking lady singing Wagner, and I'm like, no, actually, like we staged an opera version of The Hobbit when I was like 11 and I played a dwarf. The lines between musical theater and opera are very blurry, but yeah, so classical training is kind of how I got where I am.
Did you need to be encouraged to keep practicing and stay in opera? Many kids, when they start with a musical instrument, piano, guitar, they don't like the practice. They don't like that that pain in order to get the gain. Was it were you a different kind of kid? Did you just love singing and love opera and just love running around the stage?
Yeah, I never really needed much pushing. When I was younger, before we started really doing a lot of the big fun shows, when I was just kind of in the little baby choruses, she would have to kind of drag me out of the house sometimes to go to practice. But you kind of have to do that to take a 7-year-old anywhere. But I was just kind of self-motivated. I just thought it was really fun. All my friends were in the choir, and it was just such an outlet, and I just loved it. So I didn't really have to be convinced to keep it going once I passed a certain age. Once I was in middle school, I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this. This is my thing.
You just came back from performing in New York City. Tell us
I
about
did.
New York City.
I did.
What was it? What were you doing there? What were the gigs like? How was the audience?
Yeah, so I was actually tagging along with a band that I'm friends with. It's called Cedar Bend. They're sort of like a jazz rock, weird indie music kid band, and their keys player dropped out a few days before their little New York tour, and so they were like, "Maddy, you play piano. You should play." And so I hopped on, and we went busking in Central Park, and I sang a bunch of jazz standards. It was really cool to be performing in New York City in general, because people are just so interested in what's going on in public spaces, which I think is something that you don't see in other smaller cities, is just that acceptance that there's crazy things happening all the time, and people just love to be a part of it and be a spectator and appreciate art just anywhere, kind of impromptu. And that was really fun. And we played a couple shows in Harlem, which was also really cool. The energy in those bars was just people really just loved music,
Mhm.
and they were just really excited to interact with us and to talk to us after the show and to dance with us. And it was a very one of those it was definitely one of those experiences that kind of changes your artist brain a little bit.
Well, I've talked to people who have done busking in Toronto or Mississauga, or,
Mhm.
those kind of places. Busking in New York City with so many people, with so many, as you say, like there's crazy stuff going on all the time. What's it like to busk in New York City?
Oh, it's it's different than busking in Toronto. I think people in Toronto are somehow I think people in Toronto are less open generally. I
Mm.
find that generally around Canada, just being a performer in Canada versus in the US, is I think there's this weird rugged openness that Americans have that makes it really fun to perform for them because they're so open to having you in their spaces. And performing in New York was busking in New York was cool. People were taking a lot of videos. Everybody's has their phones out all the time and is like recording absolutely everything that happens ever, which is a little irritating sometimes when you're like, can you just put your phone down and like watch the show? But it's also it's great if you're like, a new artist trying to get social media attention. So everybody was like posting us, and there were kids dancing, and it was very much the experience that I get as a busker in Toronto at the farmers market on a really hoppin' Sunday when there are a lot of families out, and it's really lively, and it's summer and everybody's kind of just joyful. And it was kind of like that, but just like population times 20. There was a lot of people there.
How was the money? Did you make some good coin?
Good. It was good.
Is
It
good.
was really good. It was really good.
You make more money busking or in the club?
I think busking. I think busking
Yeah.
because people can come and go, so they don't have to go and sit in the bar for a long time. Kind of people coming down and throwing down $5, $10, which is nice. There were 8 of us, and I think by the end of it, with our tips and our one day of busking, we all made $60, which is
Hmm.
divided, split between 8 people is not bad.
$60 is $60. It's $60 more than you had at the beginning of
When
the
you were a
day.
college student, $60. Thank you very much. Awesome. I get like 12 meals out of that.
When you do those kinds of things where you're experimenting with the
Yes.
banjo or you're experimenting with a guitar and you take it out of standard tuning and maybe, tune it in G or tune it in whatever note. Does that come from your understanding of music by studying music, or do you think that's just something that organically happens within you as a creative person?
I think I can't I think I can't escape my training. That part of your brain really just doesn't ever leave. Um, it actually is something that I get frustrated with these days because I think that going to music school has somehow made me less creative with music because I'm
Mm.
thinking too much about what I'm doing. I think before I knew a lot about music theory, sometimes I just wrote better music. I just wrote more interesting music because it was all intuitive and it was all based on feel. But I think there is also obviously an element that can't escape the awareness that I'm doing a 1 2 5 1 progression.
Yep.
Um, and so there is that sort of trained ear that can allow me to identify, oh, this sounds musically consonant, or I can do this differently and make it sound better because of this thing. But there is absolutely an element to it that is just feel. And some of my favorite songs that I've written, I've just put my guitar in a weird tuning and just made up shapes. I don't understand the fretboard enough to really know what chords I'm playing if I'm in D, if I'm in open D. So I just kind of was like, what if I put my hand in this E shape and then slide it up? Wow, that sounds really cool. I'm going to do that again. And I just like keep fiddling with it until I have a progression that I like. And it's just a lot of it is just intuition and just playing. I think that is something that music school makes you forget, is that music is play and it's creativity and it's supposed to be fun.
when you're when you're singing, when I was listening to your song, the one that we're going to feature today, there are times when there is no question that you have an operatic tone to your voice. There's no question, and it comes through, and then it goes into the background, and then it starts to creep through, and then it goes into the background. Do you do that on purpose, or is that just something that happens when you're singing?
I don't know. It's just kind of something that happens. I think I can't escape the the dramatic aspect of delivering any text, because that's so an important thing of singing opera or art song, is really intentional delivery of every single line, and even every single word is colored in a certain way that evokes the meaning of the piece and whatever, whatever, whatever. And my boyfriend who produced the record, when we were doing all the vocals, he produced the new record, the Falcon Song EP. When we were doing the vocals, he kept being like, "You sound like you're singing musical theater. You're singing a folk song, Maddie. Like, you don't have to enunciate every word like that." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't. I cannot help it. I can't help the leaning into it and the diction, and it's so baked in. It's not even conscious."
So let's get into one of the songs that Maddie wrote. This song is on Maddie's new EP, Falcon Song, released in 2024. If you have ever truly been in love, you'll be able to relate to this song. So let's take a listen to singer-songwriter Maddy Ringo and her song, Canopy.
That's it, maybe I'll see the forest for the trees inside a rainy summer dream, the shelter of a canopy. Feelings and desires and emotions and affections, and that's it, maybe. I wanna take you on the highway and kiss your fingers by the fireside and learn the words to all your history and find you first amongst the crowd. But that's it, maybe I'll see the forest for the trees inside a rainy summer dream, the shelter of a canopy. Feelings and desires and emotions and affections, and that's it, maybe. Within the winter I am open, I search for sunshine on the inside, folding over like the hangman to see reflections in the moonlight, and in the black burning thorns of my lungs I make a bed for you, foolish girl. For the tree inside a rainy summer dream, the shelter of a canopy. Feelings and desires and emotions and affections, and that's it, maybe.
That was Canopy by Maddy Ringo. Maddy, tell us about the song. Tell us about the inspiration. What's the song about? I listened to it, and of course, in the intro, it is a love song. So tell us about it yourself in your own words.
Yeah, I think it's a song about loving when you kind of finally thought you were done with that. I actually, it was based on a prompt. So there's this really cool music venue in Ann Arbor called Black Crystal Cafe. and they have these songwriter nights once a month where you get 4 or 5 songwriters, and the guy who runs the place will give us a prompt of a song title, and you have to kind of interpret that however you want. And so the prompt was, "That's it, ellipses, maybe." And so that was the prompt for the song. And immediately, just the first thing I thought was that I was in this new relationship after having had chronic boy problems for a long time, which makes for really great songwriting content.
Great songwriting.
But once you actually are just kind of settled, you're kind of like, wow, what do I do with myself? Like, what do I write about now? And so the first thing that came to mind was just that I had so thought that I was done. And then this, I guess that's kind of how it works. I mean, my mom always says that she had completely just sworn off men before she met my dad. Like within like a few months, he was just like there. And she was like, oh my God, thank you, I guess. But like, do I really have to go? Do I really have to do this again? Like, I was finished. We were done. And then he's like, hey, what's up? And she was like, oh, okay. And so I think it was definitely written in that vein of just being so excited about something and someone and just being like, oh my God, like it's happening again. I'm never coming back from this.
So how do people find out more about you, Maddy? They want to find about your website, your socials, your music that's coming up, where you're going to be performing. Where can they go and find out all that information?
I'd say that my Instagram is always the best place because that's the thing that I'm on the most, because I'm Gen Z. It's in my hand. I'm always there. And that's definitely the best place. If I'll just be shilling for all of my shows, and it's, or just like pictures of me on the road. And like, if you just want to know who I am, Instagram is probably the place. But maddyringo.com, Maddy Ringo on YouTube, and Facebook for all of my fans over 50. Facebook is also a great place. I'm also on Facebook a lot.
We have been in conversation with Maddy Ringo. Maddy, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.